If you want to know where the midterm campaigns stand, one way is to take Deep Throat's advice and follow the money. Democrats are outraising Republicans, but at one top Democrat is coming under fire for his spending habits. We want to bring in our panel, Jonathan Alter of Newsweek and Terry Jeffrey of Human Events. Jonathan, let me begin with you, of course. The Democrats' Senate Committee and the Democrats' House Committee has, for the first time in recent memory, outraised the Republican Party. They are tapping into smaller donors. Does this give them an advantage in November?
Well, actually, I think there'll be rough parity because there are other sources of funding, and Republicans still have an overall advantage, even though Rahm Emanuel, who's the congressman who's running the Democratic House races, and Chuck Schumer, who's the Democratic senator who's running the Senate races, have done an excellent job in raising more cash. But basically what we have is a level playing field. That would tend to favor Democrats a little bit because traditionally they just get outspent by Republicans who have a wealthier donor base. And also, actually, the Republicans have done in recent years extremely well from small donors as well. So that gap's getting narrowed. This is extremely important in Senate and House races and gubernatorial races, but it's a really important thing to keep in mind, Norah, that it has no relevance at all in presidential races. And people tend to conflate the two and say, well, whoever's got the early money is going to be the nominee in presidential politics. Totally irrelevant. It's about free media and momentum and how you do in the campaign, but it's extremely relevant in these midterm elections.
That's right. And, you know, interesting, Terry, earlier this summer, the Washington Post reported that in 6 of the 10 open House seats, that's where there's not an incumbent running, the Democratic candidates outraised the Republican candidates. Democrats traditionally have a hard time raising as much money as Republicans, so it puts them in good shape to run extra advertising, to get out the vote efforts. Is this Republicans have struggled, especially this midterm election?
Well, I think you're seeing relatively more success on the Democrats in raising money, and I do think it shows the mood of the country. There's a little more enthusiasm on the Democratic side. Saying a little earlier, the Republicans made the mistake of depressing their own base by walking away from their principles on some issues, particularly spending and on immigration. I think there's a lot of conservatives out there who are very angry about President Bush's position on immigration. They don't like the fact that the Congress hasn't moved to actually secure the border. They do not want an amnesty. So that while the Republicans are suppressing their base, I think the overall mood in the country has put a little bit more enthusiasm on the Democratic side so far, which is reflected in the fundraising.
Jonathan, so we've talked about the House and the Senate committees and Democrats doing a good job raising money in those particular committees. But when it comes to the Republican National Committee versus the Democratic National Committee, Howard Dean has spent 5 times more money than the Republicans. And in fact, going into this season, the Republicans have about $40 million or so in the bank, and the Democrats just have about $9 million in those national committees. What's going on with Howard Dean? Where is he spending all this money, and does that ultimately hurt the Democrats?
Well, that's a big argument that's going on right now inside the Democratic Party. There's a lot of hard feelings between Howard Dean at the DNC and the people who are running these Senate and House campaigns. Dean's game plan has been party building in the states. So most of the money that the DNC raised has been used to build state party organizations. A whole other school of thought says, hey, that's just irrelevant to winning these midterm elections. So Dean is trying to play a longer-term game, and they're not really on the same page, and that's an advantage that the Republicans have. They have much better coordination between the RNC and these individual campaigns. And also, I've noticed that the RNC is much quicker off the mark in terms of rapid response. They have a better war room than the DNC does in terms of getting out there and really, you know, shooting the spitballs at the Democrats. The Democrats aren't nearly as good as shooting the spitballs at the Republicans.
Spitballs are important. We're all reporters, and we know what that means. That means that the RNC sends us essentially, which is campaign literature or talking points or whatever it may be, and the RNC is very good at that. Jonathan makes a great point. We're going to have more on Decision 2006. Something interesting coming up, how mortgage moms might play a star